You're listening to the Logos Veritas podcast. I'm your host, Brett Rogers. Through community, conversation, and lifelong learning, we seek to help you love God, love others, and make disciples. If you want to grow closer to God alongside those who love Him as well, this is the show for you. Hey everyone, Brett here. And today, rather than continuing with our series here in 1 John that we started in, as I said here in weeks past, that we've had some time here with my family and I looking for different houses and everything. The routine that I had has been very drastically reshaped. So as we are looking for a new place to live and being able to find our place here in the community and everything, get plugged in and stuff, that has looked, the schedule and everything has looked a lot different. So I want to go ahead and thank you in advance for you guys handling so well the kind of erratic nature here of the postings and interactions here lately. It's not been my intent for things to be like that. It's just that's kind of the way that things have been over the last week or two. So thank you very much for your continued prayers, for your support, and for any messages that come in. It means a lot to know that we've got a community here that is not only consuming what we're producing here, but is also able and willing to invest here with us and getting to know me, my family a little bit, ministry that we're doing here, and just want to really thank you for that. That means a lot to me. So instead of getting into chapter 2 here in 1 John, we will get back to that. Today I wanted to take a look at some divine interruptions. Because it turns out that sometimes God's plan for us isn't the plan that we had. And His ways, the Bible says, are not our ways. And that can be a pithy little saying that we just kind of mentally assent to, and oh yeah, His ways aren't my ways. But then, when it actually turns out that His ways are not my ways, I end up being like, dude, what are you doing, God? That's not what I had in mind at all. And He's, remember what my word says. Your ways are not my ways. And we get caught off guard and act like we're surprised that this is the case when He warned us in advance that this is the case. Okay, so His ways are not our ways. Sometimes there are divine interruptions in our routine, in our schedule, in our carefully established plans for how things will go. And despite our best attempts, despite our best efforts to thwart those interruptions and make sure that things remain a steady, predictable, kind of comfortable existence, it turns out we're not the ones who are ordering our steps, that God is. And so how we handle those interruptions becomes all the more important. Will we faithfully trust in the Lord, surrender to Him, and follow His lead during those interruptions? Or will we insist on our way of doing things since we know it's best and reap the benefits or consequences of that? For an example of what I'm talking about today, I'm going to take a look just so briefly at the stories of Samuel the prophet and King Saul. Okay, Samuel, as a young man, he ends up living in the Lord's house, right? Ministering at the tabernacle in Shiloh. And as he's there, he ends up hearing this voice that's calling to him in the night, going, Samuel, Samuel, Samuel. And what? After the third time of hearing this voice and getting up and running over to Eli, and yep, here I am. And just like you called for me, I'm right here. How's come Eli doesn't remember saying things? That's just a little concerning. And Eli realizes, okay, this boy is hearing the presence of the Lord. He's hearing the voice of the Lord call him. This isn't just nothing, especially after a third time. And he's convinced it was me. So he tells him to call out and say, "Speak, Lord, your servant is listening." And God does speak. That encounter with the Lord changed Samuel's life in inconceivable ways that Samuel would have had no idea would have been possible. That he ends up becoming the spokesman for the Lord, right? Whereas he was a servant boy in the house of the Lord, he ends up being the one who represents the Lord to the nations of Israel after Eli and his family are judged, and the Ark of the Covenant is taken by the Philistines. That one divine interruption, a willingness to stop, to be interrupted in a time of rest, peace, comfort, and security, right? While Samuel is in bed, or relative security, God only knows what Hophni and Phinehas were doing. But in a time of relative peace, comfort, safety, and security, Samuel was willing to be interrupted and to continue serving, even though he was at rest. Wake me up in the middle of the night. I mean, I'm not going to probably be the happiest camper in the neighborhood. I'll want to know that there's a good reason why I'm getting up and being interrupted. And as I say that, how many times has the Lord woken us up in the middle of the night and pressed something on our heart, if we're even asking him if he's the reason that we are up in the middle of the night? It's not just we're thirsty or we got to go to the restroom. Are we asking him if it's him? If there's something that he wants, a burden that is on his heart, something that he's not like, what am I going to do? But something like someone that is precious to him, that's on his heart, that he wants to entrust us with that burden for, and entrust to us to pray, to lift up, and to intercede on behalf of that person, right? We've spoken here at Southview here recently about how Jesus, he calls us to follow him in many ways, and one of those ways is into intercession. And the intercession doesn't just look like you're lifting up a long laundry list of prayer requests to the Lord, but it also looks like stepping into the gap, to use some Choco de Jesus language there, stepping into the gap that stands between someone and the Lord, bridging that divide and being an intermediary, right? A go-between, because Jesus modeled that for us and said, just as the Father sent him, he's sending us now. So we are to bring people to a place where they can come to know the Lord. We're to be that bridge for them. Are we willing to be interrupted in a period where we're at rest, whether that's a physical rest in the middle of the night, or in a period where maybe we're in a valley season? We tend to look down on those. We've talked about that before. We tend to look down on valley seasons and be suspicious of them, unless we're, in the middle of a lot of comfort and abundance and everything, and that feels nice in the moment. And there's that little thing in the back of our head maybe that, like, hey, you need to be careful here because there's a temptation to fall away from the Lord and sin, but I need to not do that. But it's easy to maybe feel like we, well, to quote the Bible on it, to either feel like, who is the Lord that I would need him, or to, if we have too much or if we have too little, to be tempted to sin against the Lord and bring dishonor to his name, right? To paraphrase there. But to be able to be interrupted and receive that interruption well, right? Can the Lord who orders our steps, do we give him permission to interrupt us? Or do we treat him like an alarm clock that interrupts our sleep in the morning? Enough, 5 more minutes. And you're swatting it, and or if you watch Spider-Man or something, he's hammer fisting it through the floor and destroying it. Wouldn't be a bad idea sometimes, but man, do we treat the Lord that way when he seeks to shake us out of the comfortable place that we've been in, out of our comfort zone? I was reading a book by Preston Ulmer called The Doubters Club. And in this Doubters Club book, he says that he cites some research that shows that if we're not allowing ourselves to be stretched, to be stressed to a healthy degree of stress, that the learning centers in our brain cool off. And we are not likely to learn anything new, to take anything new in. And it can be very detrimental to us insofar as we are people who are supposed to learn, who are supposed to be in a place where we are being tested, tried, right? And everything that the Bible talks about, because the world rejected Jesus, they're going to reject us and all that. But there's something about being in health magazines, medical research will tell you this. You don't have to go to the Bible to learn this, but it's just interesting that it all lines up. That when you're put in a place that you are out of your element, that you're stressed, that you are being pressed down, right? Or, when you're being pressed and what's inside comes oozing out, that's the period where, where the rubber hits the road, where you are most, at your most vulnerable point, as you're coming to the end of your rope about what you know to do for things. And that's sometimes the clearest when we hear the Lord, is when we get into those spots. That's when we learn. That's when we make new connections and see new ways of understanding things and applying things that maybe we didn't know before, or we didn't understand before. And look at Saul, for instance, right? At first, as he's being lined up to be king of Israel, there, the first king in Israel, he's prophesying with the prophets, after he goes out and he's finding his father's lost sheep, and he ends up prophesying with the prophets, and the spirit of the Lord rushes on him and everything, and it's awesome, and he's looking like, hey man, this guy's head and shoulders above everybody else. Like, he's big, he's probably like an Arnold Schwarzenegger kind of guy, because he's so much bigger and stronger than everybody else. He literally having head and shoulders above everybody else. He's the guy that we want leading everybody. And then when they go to make him king, oh, and he's humbled to boot, or he's just scared. Either way, he's hiding in the luggage. He doesn't actually want to be king because he's the smallest family of the smallest tribe of Israel, and gets to feeling a little self-conscious about that fact. Well, later on, when the Lord decides to interrupt him, when he's told to wait, and Saul's a go-get-it-done kind of guy, it turns out, and the Lord begins to stretch him and press him by making him wait instead of letting him just take care of business like he's used to. That's when we see what's in Saul begins to ooze out. And it's not a good kind of ooze either. It's where is this coming from? As he begins to not listen to the Lord, he does not wait for Samuel. He, not only does he do that, but he begins to throw spears at David at his son Jonathan, and has less and less of a regard for not only his subjects, but even his loved ones, people in his own family, in the family that he seemed to treasure just years earlier. He is now disregarding and even attempting to kill because they're not going along with what he sees as best. The Lord is faithful to reveal what's in us and bring that to the surface. And if you read anything about Puritan kind of beliefs on things, there is that sense, you get that sense in listening to or reading some of the things that they left behind about how the Lord is so holy and so pure, and there's such a nature in me that's twisted, that this side of eternity, I'm never going to be holy like the Lord is. He's always going to be dredging something up, revealing something to me that I must submit to him. And there is a part of that yeah, absolutely. Because our flesh is sinful, it's twisted, it's wicked, and the Lord is faithful to bring those things to the surface for us to be able to hand them over to him and so he can remove those and draw us nearer to him. He wants us to know him, to be near to him, right? Not just to be around him, but to be with him, in him. And to do that, it's going to cause some interruptions, some divine interruptions in the way that we do things. One book entitled Before We Kill You and Eat You, talking about an H.B. Garlock, who is a missionary to Africa. He talks about, and I think we've referenced this before as well, where he's walking down a path in Africa and he drops over on the side of the path, still holding his pack, and he's like over on his side and just, he's unconscious on the side of the path here. He's dying of malaria. And the porters look to each other, the guys who are walking with him, like, yep, we've seen this before. Who's carrying his pack? I mean, there's nothing they can do. And it's not looking like this guy's going to make it. Well, unbeknownst to them, on the other side of the world, God ends up waking up H.B. Garlock's dad and tells him, you need to pray for your son right now. Oh, yeah, God, no. I'll get to... No, get up right now and pray for your son. And dad says, again, yeah, I'll wake up a little early and do it. No, you need to... Like this urge got so intense that he couldn't help but get up. He felt the urge was something that the need was something that was being presented to him at that moment. Was serious, was urgent, and didn't know what it was. Didn't have a phone call that, hey man, your son's dying of malaria, right? No one's got cell phones back in the day. But he gets up and begins to pray for his son. And eventually the feeling subsides. Well, unbeknownst to him, on the other side of the world, H.B. Garlock gets up off the side of the trail while the porters are deciding how they're going to divvy up the pack that he's got and be able to all of them bear the load because this guy's dying. Well, all of a sudden he just gets up and, all right, let's go, and marches on. What a testimony. He gets healed like that of malaria as he's about ready to die. And the color all came back. His strength was renewed. He got up. No more complications with it. Well, his dad wouldn't find out until a long time later when they began to look at which day it was and what time it was and everything, that it worked out to right as H.B. Garlock was in need. The Lord was interrupting the rest of his father to press him into prayer for his son. Now, could God have touched H.B. Garlock without prayer from his dad? Sure. But what if the Lord is choosing to work through us to accomplish his will for something? Can we be bothered to be interrupted? There's a story from uh, about Thomas Jefferson and company that as they were riding around the country on horseback, they came to a river that was flooded, and so the bridge was washed out for this river. So he and his team had to ford the river, and there was a guy who was there who was waiting to cross and saw them coming. So he kind of steps off to the side, and as folks are crossing, this guy walks up to President Jefferson and asks if he can get a ride across the river, and he was told yes. So he hops on there. They cross the river, which he's president. That should be a yes. I feel like if you're gonna be the lead citizen, then you should lead by serving, in some ways. But anyway, so he gets across the river, and the guys ask him. The other guys in the that were riding with President Jefferson asked the guy, "So, how's come you asked the president to give you a ride across the river, huh?" Oh, like he didn't realize it was the president, and like, whoa, what has happened here? I didn't realize it was the president. I was looking at each of you guys' faces, and some of y'all had a no face. He had a yes face. So he wasn't going to ask just anybody for help. There were some people that weren't going to allow themselves to be interrupted to help somebody. But there were a few folks in their company, it seems, that were willing to, and the president was one of them. Do we have the countenance, the bearing, the look of somebody that would be willing to help if we were approached? Or do we go through the day just kind of like, I can't stand being here. What's going on? These people drive me nuts. Hey, how you doing? What do you want? Kind of thing. So there are some times where, yeah, we may have things that need done, but as Jesus modeled, when he was touched, when people came to seek him, when people were looking for help, for a rescue, for being able to know and to meet the Lord, he made time for them. Even when it was urgent that he get somewhere, like to heal Jairus' daughter. Nothing's impossible for him. And there's nothing wrong with making time for somebody or for a situation that he's entrusting to us. But that takes ears and heart to understand, ears to hear, heart to understand, eyes to see what it is that he is entrusting to us, what it is that he is calling us, the situations he's calling us to step into, the people that he's calling us to be, time spent in his word, time spent praying, like talking to him, listening to his voice. Maybe not just hearing what he says, because how fickle is our imagination, is our memory, our ability to hold on to things that we hear and from the Lord. Sometimes it's easy to hear him and, oh, that was so good. All right, well, what else we got to go do? And we don't treasure the word that, it's not scripture, right? It's not that same kind of inspiration. But when the Lord speaks to you, is that something that you treasure? That you write down what he says? That you maybe you write it down to test it against scripture. Was this really the Lord? Or do we just accept whatever comes our way? Can we be bothered to be interrupted? Things like these. I've been taking a look around and seeing, Lord, what is it that you have for me, like for my family, for our church family here, for the city that you've called us to, Lord, for the people that you've designed us to be, and the people who we need to be able to represent you faithfully and be able to announce that your kingdom is here, Lord, and to demonstrate that. What is it that you have in store? One thing has been that he's been talking about in some ways is having the ability to be interrupted, right? Not being so wrapped up in our plans that we miss what he's doing, where he's going, who he's pointing us to, the people that he loves. We can fall in love with systems pretty quickly, and sometimes we miss the people that we've been sent to minister to. regardless of what area and what field we're in. But if we'll listen to the Lord, if we'll put our trust in Him, and if we'll open our heart to Him, He'll come in, He'll dine with us. His presence will pour over us, reside within us, and will empower us to cooperate with Him and see His will accomplished. And that's what I want for you, is to be able to know the Lord, to encounter Him, and to not just encounter Him, like have a weekend fling with the Lord, and, oh, wasn't that so great? And then, years down the line, oh, I remember that one time I had with God. But like, reside with Him, to live in His presence, and be swept off your feet by just how good He is, your love for Him every day. And even in the days where it's not like that, because there'll be days like that, okay? But that you can rest assured in His goodness, in His presence, in His character and who He is, and with the fact that He'll never leave you or forsake you when your trust is in Him and when you're going like He's commissioned us to go. Guys, this has been Brett Rogers on the Logos Veritas podcast. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm looking forward to being able to come back and speak to you again soon and to share with you what the Lord's doing. Hopefully, we're taking a look here at having some more guests lined up. I'd like to be able to do some more interviews. If there's anyone you want to see and have me reach out to be able to interview, love to be able to make that happen. Please feel free to email me at logosveritaspodcast@gmail.com. You can reach out to me on Facebook on the Logos Veritas page, and all the other ways we're going to list here in the outro. Guys, it's been good talking to you. Hope to see you again soon. Bye. Thanks for joining us for today's episode of the Logos Veritas podcast. If you like today's episode, please like and subscribe and share this episode with any friends that you think may enjoy it. If you'd have any questions or would like to contact us, you can reach us via email at logosveritaspodcast@gmail.com or through Facebook, Discord, and YouTube. Thanks again for joining us today, and we look forward to seeing you soon. Bye.